he talks about the government dependency, and I was reading an article this morning. Put something away. I never thought of it before, and I'm so happy that I read it because this guy, whoever he is, I think he's a Chicago. He's associate professor of law at University of Chicago Law School, and he goes through. He's talking about how he's one of the supposed rich people that is going to be have his taxes raised. And of course, but his point is we don't live like Michael Bloomberg does. We have a couple of good jobs, myself and my wife, and we do fairly well. But he's going through his budget basically of how he doesn't really live as extravagantly as you might realize, and it is why he shouldn't have his taxes raised. But the first thing he says is the biggest expense for us is what? What's the biggest expense?
Taxes.
Financing government. It's not the biggest expense. Is everyone would say they're home
by far
to that.
No,
but it's financing
taxes.
This crappy government that 90% of the stuff they do
you disagree with.
I disagree with, and I don't want done.
Yeah.
And that's my biggest line item. My biggest expense every year is giving money into this horrible system that restricts people and their freedom and their entrepreneurship and everything else. All the stuff that we rail about every day. I mean, you want to talk about, in reality, it's a forced sort of hypocritical action. I mean, like, the biggest thing I spend money on is this freaking government, in which most of the stuff they do I don't like.
And how much is enough? When you add it all up between federal, state, local taxes, forget about sales tax. Forget about property tax. You're already 55% for the upper income tax bracket. 55%. Now, how much is enough? Is it 70%? Is it 80%? How much do rich people not need of what they earn?
Well, we do know what Barack Obama's father's answer was to that question.
100%.
Because he wrote it in an essay. 100%.
And that was his long, right? I think, if I remember right, his essay was, as long as the government provides him with services he needs just to survive or whatever.
Right, and that's
I mean, come on.
Straight up. Obviously, he was a communist, but I mean,
you could take everything and just give them back what they need to eat, and that's good.
And it seems insane, but remember that we had a tax rate in this country of what, 94?
Yeah, it was huge.
For the highest earners?
That was over $25,000 a year.
Oh, well, if you're making that much, I can't disagree with it. $25,000 a year.
I mean, please, forget about it.
It's still, over inflation, sure, it's a lot of money, but
it was then. But still.
Of what? It's like the people who get the least from the government are constantly giving the most. And,
yes.
I understand that there is a place, I don't think even most conservatives would argue with you're talking about someone who is disabled, who has no chance of working, and has, for whatever reason, has no access to charity and living on the street and all this. There's, of course, arguments to be made for certain situations. But, the amount of people...
We're
talking able-bodied people who, many of them have fallen on bad times, but, you have to be able to... There has to be some limit on this. And it doesn't seem like that limit exists with this government.
No.
They're saying right now it's 35 to 39, but each state is raising it. Property taxes are going up. All the other fees are going up. Things you buy, the taxes are going up. And, of course, inflation, which a lot of people call a hidden tax, that's been an issue not really over the past year or two, but over the past couple of decades, it's been insane.
And the government tries to get around all this by saying or implying, and usually they say it outright, that the wealthy don't work. It's the working people they're worried about. Like, the wealthy people don't work?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, that's been proven.
Everybody who's wealthy had it handed to them. Look, my dad worked 2 jobs. He worked for the phone company by day, at night, every night, for 35 years. He cleaned a local bank. He was a janitor at a bank. So he worked at the phone company and as a janitor, and my mom worked at the hospital. The most they ever made combined in 1 year was $28,000. $28,000 together. I mean, they worked out of their minds hard. They didn't have any money to send me to school or to pay my way or to get me in with anybody in radio. They had no connections. I had no connections. When Glenn started out, he had no connections. The people who work in this building worked their butts off to get where they are today. Glenn worked his butt and continues to. I mean, we just had this brutal weekend with 3 cities in 2 days and non-stop. I mean, we got like 4 hours of sleep the whole weekend. Non-stop work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so he continues to work his butt off. You can't say the wealthy didn't earn it and they don't work for it now, because they do. The hardest working people I know are wealthy people. How'd they get that way? They worked.
Many times, yeah. I mean, that's not to say that there aren't hardworking people who don't make a lot of money. There certainly
of course
are.
There are, but they're already covered by the government, because we always hear about them. We always hear about the people who don't make that much money and they work hard, and they do. But that's how you get ahead. Keep doing it, and eventually something will break your way. Isn't that what the American dream is? It really is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. That doesn't mean it breaks the great way for everybody in their life as far as making a lot of money.
Doesn't.
I mean, the bottom line is, like, you know, there's been certain choices I've made in my life that have worked out financially. But I could have easily been – there's a lot of people I know in radio who've, you know, worked really hard and you know, didn't have as good luck, you know, or whatever.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the point –
or just weren't as talented.
Well, I mean,
thank you, Pat. There is.
Thank you, Pat. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's obviously true.
Obviously true.
Let me. We'll take a break here because it's A, time for a break, but B, I'm going to dig up a couple of numbers on what you're talking about.
Okay.
About do rich people really get everything handed to them?
Yeah,
because it's what you're talking. It's amazing, and you learn a lot about rich people as well when you see these numbers.
I've heard this figure, and I'm curious as to see if I remember it correctly.
Talking about. The evil rich people who just do nothing but hoard their money.
Yeah.
This is going back to if you see here, this book. It's called An Inconvenient Book. And there's a chapter on income inequality in it, and there's some great stuff in there because people really do see that. I think most people just look at it. Oh, the rich people, all they do is get their money handed to them. They don't do anything. Well, one of the great things about trying to become wealthy, and one of the reasons why people try to do it, is because when you have some money, it is easier to make money. You are able to have money in investments which earn returns, and that's difficult to do when you have no money. So yes, if it wasn't for that, there'd be no reason to try to become wealthy. I mean, that is one of the reasons why you do it. But this goes back, of course, they're all robber barons. They're all, you know, all the evil rich people just living off inheritances. In 1916, the wealthiest 1% lived almost solely on inheritance and previously made wealth. Their stashes of money continually churn out new money at such a rate that the wealthiest people earned only about 1/5 of their income from actual work in 1916. That is all the way up to 60% now. It's tripled. 60% of money now for the wealthiest comes from working still. So think about that. You're already in the wealthiest 1%. You don't need to work anymore. They're still making 60% of their money from current work. Listen to the rest of the society of how that's helped, though. Between 1979 and 2004, the number of American households earning less than an inflation-adjusted $75K a year decreased by 10%. So if you're earning less, the amount of people decreased by 10%. Those earning more than $75,000 increased by the same amount. In the same time period, the median size of a newly built home increased from 1,485 square feet to 2,140 square feet. Now, 40% of new homes are built with 4 or more bedrooms, and 90% of them have central air. Between 1997 and 2003, this book's a few years old, obviously, the number of people with computers at home rose by 68%, and 206% more people had obtained internet access. The inflation-adjusted net worth of a median family rose by 31%, from midway through Bill Clinton to midway through George W. Bush. It goes on and on. And there's a study taken by American University that many people who talked about income inequality cite as evidence that it's just impossible to move. It's called Understanding Mobility in America. And it concluded that people who grow up wealthy, see if you can follow this, Pat, because this one's difficult. People that grow up wealthy have a better chance at staying wealthy.
Oh, wow.
I know it's shocking, but how many? Now think about this. You're an evil rich person. You have some kids. What is it? What's that? 85, 90% stay wealthy for the rest of their lives because you're so rich and you give it down to their kids? Actually, 22% of children of rich people stay in and I'm saying rich people, the top 20% of earners. I'm not talking about people in the wealthiest 1%. 22% chance you'll stay in the top 20% of earners. So, I mean, I don't know what the top 20% number is, but it's probably roughly 75,000.
Yeah, it's probably not that high.
And just to stay in that category, you only have a 22% chance of that. It goes on to say that the people who make the least amount of money, the bottom fifth of all earners, now have almost 60% chance that their children will leave that group. And of those people, almost 60% of them will move up more than one quintile, meaning you'd go from the bottom earners to for the bottom 20% to the medium 20% or the highest 20%. 60%. I mean, there is room to move in our society, and that is one of the best things about us.